Hello, my name is Adam Bean and welcome to the 63rd edition of AirHacks TV. And something new. I decided to deliver another workshop called Streaming Architectures, and this is already the 4th day in December, so it will be a crowded week. And the reason for that is I get more and more questions regarding JMS versus Kafka, also in projects. And what I decided is to just focus fully on streaming architectures. It's not like using Kafka for remote procedure call, or misuse Kafka for a remote procedure call, rather than focus on event stores, Kafka Flink, and Apache Pulsar, and Spark, and streaming and data processing. So we'll have a full day about that, and probably half theory and half coding, or even more coding if possible. And these are the news regarding the workshops. What's also new is a new tool I've wrote. It's called Jotanizer. This is Jotanizer SH. And what it does is, it is just command line tool which generates JSON Web Tokens with ready-to-use microprofile configuration and public and private key. So, and the idea is what you can do, you can create tokens with predefined groups, which become roles, and UPN, which becomes principal. And you can use that to set the security, so the authorization and authentication and authorization with microprofile JWT. And I use it, for instance, for testing, where we are able to override the roles as we need for testing. And I got lots of questions about that also during the AirHacks TV, and I decided to implement a small tool. And I also recorded a screencast which shows how it works in action. And as I mentioned multiple times, this is really nothing to show from the code perspective, because you only apply an annotation like a permit all, or roles allowed, or deny all, and it will just work out of the box. So the application server will parse the token for you and map the groups to roles. Okay, so now also something new and surprising. So I was approached by the I think a management behind the site CV compiler, and the CV compiler I didn't know actually. The site is fairly known. They are listed on TechCrunch and Product Hunt. So it's an interesting startup with a very good feedback from the users, and they compiled the most demanded technologies, and asked me for a comment. And I asked them, okay, I will write you a few sentences. I think they will be published on DZone, but I would like to share the results with you, because I get lots of questions on AirHacks TV, what we should learn, and which technologies are interesting right now. And this is the result, and the result really surprised me. So Spring is highly demanded, but this is the classic Spring, and Spring Boot is right in the middle, after or before, or a little bit more popular than SOA. And Java E is in the second place. And if you take a look on REST is the third place, SQL the fourth place, Maven, and what we also see here is JPA, Java Persistence API, which is there's a standalone listing. So if you will combine JPA, let's see, JUnit TDD, Java SE of course, Maven, SQL REST, and Java E, so it would be in pretty good shape. And regardless whether Java E or Spring, or you also have a Git here, and Hibernate even is a standalone listing of Hibernate, and Hibernate is just another JPA implementation. So if you just add up, Hibernate, Maven, SQL REST, Java SE, JUnit TDD, JPA, JUnit, then I would say you would be one of the most demanded persons on job market. And this is the results based on 300 job listings from tech companies in May 2019. So I'm really curious what happens in June, but I got the questions a lot, what is actually demanded in real world projects, and this is the list. So what I would expect in future, probably some microprofile knowledge would be nice, I think, And yeah, and what really surprised me that Spring Boot is not as popular as I thought. I would rather expect Spring Boot being somewhere here, and the classic Spring would be lesser demand than Spring Boot. Okay, Elasticsearch, of course, and if you also combine Elasticsearch and NoSQL, both are, of course, Elasticsearch is NoSQL, you would be also in good shape. And of course, there's some cloud computing and microservices, and Docker is like a more general knowledge. Which also surprised me, there is no Asia and GCP. I see actually high demand in OpenShift, Kubernetes, GCP, and Asia, and what you see only here is AWS and Docker. So, also covered. Now back to the topics. So now start with the topics. And the very first question is from Altuga. And Altuga has two questions. First, should we write jars in WAR files? Easy answer, no, never. So there's no need to have jars in WAR, except you need some plugin concept, or you would like to maintain something separate because you would like to really have, you have one module which has to be delivered by another team, and this is just a constructed example, but think about like you have one team which creates the pure business logic and has to be versioned separately, and another team just creates the REST layer, and they have to be combined somehow. There where I would see, the separation between WAR and jar, but this is uncommon separation. I see some project, for example, there are 5 WAR files, and every 5 wars there are at least 3 or 4 jar files. So the craziest project I had to review were 2 wars and 120 jars. I couldn't even believe. So I actually asked, there was actually no reason for that except people just like jars. So I would say, in my personal opinion, if there is no specific use cases, forget about jars. They just make the compilation, build, and deployment slower. The next question, is Java an alien in serverless world? Java does not understand C groups. Java containers boot slow. So first, 2.1, Java does not understand C groups. This was already fixed at Java 1 or Code 1 last year. So the Oracle or OpenJDK understands C groups. So you can, or understand C groups. C groups is like container resource management. So and Java sees. So the issue was 1.5 years ago or 1 year ago that Java saw the host but not the container. This is probably what you mean. But this was fixed, and Java containers boot slow. So now is your homework. So what you should do, I created actually a screencasts with Quarkus. This is the first one. Wait a second. Scaling JVM versus a native. So in this screencast, I create native microservices and Java microservice with Quarkus based on Java. And in my opinion, it starts extremely fast. And if you just search for Quarkus in my YouTube, you will see that it starts under a half second. So, I mean, the question is, what do you expect, right? Do you expect Java? If you would write, assembler code, assembly, it would be always faster than Java. But I think it is very possible in Java to start under a second or on even milliseconds. And servers which I work with, Java EE servers, they start, for instance, Payara starts in, I would say, 3-4 seconds, and Payara Micro a little bit faster. And OpenLiberty is also 2-3 seconds. Can Quarkus IO, I didn't saw this, fix those issues? I wouldn't use Quarkus just because of the startup time, and also you have to have and serverless even. So what? Just also forgot to mention that there's a few podcasts, and I think, let's see, this is 12th May, so the 5th May. This is what I already, what you probably know because of the last Airhacks TV. So there was one podcast, Java Native Database, and about Jakarta E microprofile testing, Apache Firefighter with Mark Struberg, and we discuss CDI And the last one is with Gunnar Morling, also about Debezium. But there was also a podcast about serverless, quarkus and thin jars, and serverless without functions. And I discussed this with Sebastian Daschner, and another one was with Bruno Borges, I think. Yeah, Bruno Borges from about Jakarta microprofile in the clouds, runtimes, not servers. So there's already several hours material, I would say at least 3 hours. And for me, Java EE is actually serverless because if you think about that, we just focus on business logic. We don't care about the application servers. We push the war somewhere and it gets distributed, handled, managed, and it just works. If you mean functions as a service, so this is a completely different topic, and Quarkus would fix the startup time. Yes, it would. Also, I have to say there's an even hot start issue on AWS Lambdas, because the Lambdas are stored usually in databases, so they need a few seconds to, or I don't know, under a second or a few seconds to start at the very first time. So what usually happens in the clouds is the functions are cached, cached or pooled, so they are reused, they are hot. So in the FN server projects, they relay they say that the functions are hot, so they are not shut down, they run all the time. Okay, so yeah, it could fix the issues, but there are no issues in my project. So most of my clients just work, with full application servers on Kubernetes, and everyone is happy, and there is no need, to shut down and start the instances all the time. Okay, then Mr. Hofnagel asked me, I'm wondering, actually a recurring question, a very good one. I'm wondering when to use CDI scope or EJBs, especially JAX-RS resources. So if you have the choice, I would use EJB if they're available on application servers. And the reason for that is because the dependency injection, so whatever is injected, EJBs are pooled, and the whole injection tree is cached. Yeah, how to call it, cached or pooled again. So the application server doesn't have to re-inject the whole injection tree. It only happens once per instance. So you would get similar effect with application scoped. With request scoped is slower than EJBs. What's different is Quarkus, for instance, because on Quarkus fixes the issue. On Quarkus, you can go with request scoped because there is no reflection in place. Quarkus would inject whatever Quarkus can at compile or build time. So there should be no performance difference between EJBs and request scoped. You have to be careful with application scoped, because even if you inject IDs, path, or principles, they won't get re-injected all over again. So with request scoped, you get a fresh principle on every call. With application scoped, all the injected instances are cached or bound to the instance. So is it just for convenience to not having to deal with concurrency synchronization? Yes, I mean, convenience is a big deal. Also the only reason why I use EJBs is just convenience. I'm too lazy, to think about 5 annotations and annotate everything. Let's say I exaggerated a bit with 3 annotations. So instead of doing, pooled, which is not available, transactional and request scoped, I can just add stateless. This is cleaner, and the less code you write there, the simpler the code base, and it's easier to maintain. So I would say it's all about convenience, except application scoped or singleton, where you have to be careful. I hope we discussed that. Yeah. Then, recurring friend of the show, Der Ratsmann, by the way, I'm still waiting for your interview, but his tech leak at Otto. But what we could do, we could set up a podcast episode with you. Instead of the interview, you can have a chat about Java EE at Otto. And Otto is something like Amazon, small Amazon in Germany. So, or small. Actually, for Germany, a huge company. Comparing to Amazon is not as big, of course. We all know, so this is amazing, because in my project it's not always given that developers know this, but we all know starting own threads on application server is forbidden. It is not forbidden. I would call it discouraged. And because if you're just starting threads, threads gets out of control. If you start too many threads, the application server will be overloaded. And what can happen on Docker that even the Linux container will kill the whole process. Is the async call on JavaX, JAX-RS, Jersey JAX-RS client forbidden in this sense? It is and it is not, because if you just do the async stuff, you will take the threads from fork join pool, and the fork join pool, the size of the pool depends on the size of CPU cores, so it can still get overloaded. But your client register, you don't even have to register. There is, if you create a client, there is not registered. There is, the method is called executor. Actually, I wanted to, it's one of my to-dos to write a blog post about that. So I think it's called executor. So you can inject and manage the executor service, and with a method executor, pass the executor to the client is part of JAX-RS 2.1 or 2 plus client. And this is the solution. This is what I use. Yeah. Is it a good idea to prepare all this register stuff on the client in an EJB post construct? Yes. And this is not EJB post construct. The post construct method is actually independent from EJB. So what you mean is a method annotated with at post construct. It works for CDI and EJBs. So next one. Is OpenLiberty Minify profile the same as Quarkus? No. Quarkus and Liberty are two different servers. Are there any advantage using one over the other? I would say so. I posted about Quarkus and I actually recorded a few podcasts and screencasts. And why I did it, because the first time I see something which is a true innovation. So it is like subset of Java E, but if you follow the path, you get a jar which is not a fed jar, rather than a jar which contains business logic and points to the platform. And you have the options for native compilation out of the box, which is quite interesting. And the development mode comes out of the box, which is also interesting. And also the whole extension concept is and developer documentation are really good. So now the question is, are there any advantage using one over the other? So it always depends in my projects on the client. So if there is an IBM shop, I would say use OpenLiberty. And if there's a Red Hat shop, I would rather advise Whitefly or OpenLiberty right now, or JBoss. And if they know Glassfish, I would go with Payara. And if they know Tomcat, Tommy. This would be the first idea. And now in a few weeks ago, someone asked me, can you show us something modern? And if there's a young team and they would like to do something crazy for no reason, just go with Quarkus right now. I mean, there's no downside, because you can start with Quarkus, and if you don't like it, you can just switch to OpenLiberty, because at the end of the day, it looks like Java E. This is a subset of Java E. Other way around could be a little bit more difficult, because OpenLiberty is full Java E 8 plus microprofile server. And if you implement something, it is not given that it will run on Quarkus. So if you cannot decide and you are free, you could start with Quarkus. And if you don't like Quarkus, you can migrate away to whatever server you like. I think this is a reasonable decision. Okay, now Altuga again asked me, how can I take a code coverage report by making system testing? I think I even recorded a screencast, and if not, it is a part of the Java EE testing workshop. I think it's Java EE testing, javaeetesting.com. Exactly. And code. Let's see. I'm pretty sure I did it. Code coverage, and somewhere I recorded a part with code coverage and system test. But what you have to do is, I did it with all servers so far. You can load the agent, Jacoco agent, on the application server, and exclude, of course, the application server packages. Then you can run your system test, and you get, at the end of the day, the jacoco.exec, and you only have to load the jacoco exec to your IDE, and you see the code coverage or Sonar. So this just works. And actually, I in the recent podcast with Gunnar Morling, we discussed the idea that it would be actually great to have a quarkus extension, which already uses Jaco code to record the code coverage. So this would be actually, if you have some spare time, it would be an interesting or a good service to the community, right? Okay, so yeah, but this is what I would use. So download the jar. This is the agent. Start the application server with the agent. Exclude the packages. And the only thing which you have to remember is you get the Jaco core exec file after the server is killed, shut down. Then usually the file is written to disk. So Tunjidir asked me, "Hi Adam, please, how do I set up my machine for CI/CD build to deploy my Java app into production-like environment?" And he would like to run system tests against what? From Docklands projects. He checked in Docklands project, probably my Jenkins folder, and there was the reads paragraph server full. So the question is, so now what I understand is what you would like to have is that the full Jenkins pipeline in which behaves like production-like environment. So what I will advise you, so if you don't have Docker, Kubernetes, or OpenShift, so assume that, just bare metal, just download Jenkins. This is and then launch Jenkins with Jenkins Java minus jar Jenkins.war. So this is executable war. So it will boot. The first time you have to add username, password, and the password is stored, I think, in log file somewhere. So you have to re-enter the password. Password, yes, and then everything is set up. And what you need then is a Jenkins file, and this the content of the Jenkins file is trivial. So the first step is checkout, then a Maven clean install, Maven failsafe integration tests, then Docker build, then Docker run, and then is a little bit more challenging because what you will have to do is to wait a few seconds until the server becomes available. Then you can launch the system tests. Then you will usually tag the repository, and then you are ready to go. So on OpenShift, you can use the OpenShift integration, which comes out of the box on OpenShift. So you have a minishift or OpenShift. So if you have a machine which is a little bit more powerful, you need a little bit more RAM, you could download minishift and then play with it. And he looks forward for the Microsoft podcast with Struberg. Okay, it's the next one. Yeah, we will record this one. I would like to give Mark Strubeck a little bit more time, but we will discuss microservices. But I don't think the outcome is very positive because what I found out already that Mark and I we share some similar opinion regarding microservice overuse, and But I will try to play the devil's advocate and be a little bit pro microservices. So thank you for listening to Airhacks FM. And now SmaGL1. Hi Adam, I'm currently learning Java EE. I wanted to know what really is JMS, why is used for, and should you use it? What about Kafka? And you are one of the reasons why I actually created the streaming architectures course, because I got similar questions all the time. And the most funny questions recently I got, like, we would like to have Kafka, but we don't like the persistence. So this is like saying, we like JMS, but we don't like messages, or I really like JPA without database, something like this. But what's the difference? Very briefly, JMS, and this is I actually was curious, how Kafka is sold. And I attended several Kafka sessions, and was curious how these speakers talking about Kafka. And what's interesting is they never mentioned that JMS actually is capable of topics. So what I usually see is they only mention JMS is queue point to point, and which is true. But what also JMS is capable to do is to have publish subscribe. So I would say if you have two microservices and you would like to communicate asynchronously between microservices just for the communication, JMS is the way to go. Why? because JMS usually comprises ephemeral messages. Ephemeral means in case after the message is consumed, it disappears. And Kafka is complete different beast. So Kafka is the, I would say, streaming and event store is an event store, and the streaming architecture is completely different. So there are there are no more microservices. What you only have is like channels or topics, which are always persistent, or at least persistent for days or weeks. And you can reread the stuff over and over again. There are multiple listeners, and everyone can read whatever the client would like to. And what usually happens is you are reading from one stream, you are enriching the data and writing to another stream. So you have input, output, so cascade of topics. So complete different thing. So for me, the architecture is not even comparable. Of course, you can misuse Kafka to communicate between microservices, but this is, this is like, how SOAP and ESB were misused, just to have remote procedure call, and then it died. And by the way, Kafka could be actually a replacement of a nice replacement of ESBs, enterprise service buses. So instead of writing to something strange, Kafka would be a nice possibility, to exchange data between large applications. Okay, the next one, and friend of the show, TMS Sanchez, asked me, I just saw your article, Asynchronous JAX-RS, and this is my blog post, Asynchronous JAX-RS, and I wrote because of the timeout here. So what you can easily do, you can consume an async response, set up the timeout, and and the client gets 503. And I did some work with that, and a client asked me about timeouts, and I found no resources for that, so I wrote the blog post. This is all. But what he asked me is, but I have a question. What when we need to just return HTTP 200 just to indicate that we have received the request, but we need to call another process in the background, something like this, and this would just work. I mean, this is not a problem at all, because if you look at the code, is what it basically means is this is completely asynchronous and is completely independent from that. So what you could do, you can inject the managed executor service and run the method asynchronously. You could use microprofile with the annotation asynchronous. You can use EJBs with the annotation asynchronous. You could use completable future and then run. Just run the method. So it would just work, because this is really trivial, fire and forget, because you don't even expecting a result here. You just invoking this. So let's see. We are actually done, which is amazing. So let's see what happens here. I couldn't watch any technical problem. I don't think we have problems. So everything streams very nicely. So everything looks good. So I would say it was like, a lightning edition. So I would say thank you for watching. If you like, check out Jotanizer and What, getting more and more popular actually. So let's see. What SH. So this is the What. I use it all the time. And this is What. Oh, still an issue. And Jotanizer, which is the JSON Web Token Dispenser. And of course, see you at upcoming workshops. Hear you at AirHacks FM. And see you and hear you in 4 weeks at the 64th edition of AirHacks TV. Thank you and bye.